Ladies and gentlemen, great to see so many of you back in the hall. We've now got a fantastic panel discussion on opportunities and challenges in the AI revolution. And in the spirit of dialogue, in the spirit of APEC, that brings the public and private sector together, joining the panel is a leader of an economy that is truly embracing digital transformation and whose economy is increasingly growing from investments in digital economy, much of which will be discussed as they chair ASEAN in 2025. Before we bring the leader out, I'd like to invite your panel to the stage, Mr. Zia Mansour, the Corporate Vice President of Data and AI at Microsoft, Yang Bin Wang, CEO of Vobile, Karan Bhatia, the Global Head of Government Affairs and Public Policy at Google, and the moderator for the session is Jan De Silva, member of the APEC Business Advisory Council for Canada, and who also chairs the Digital and Innovation Working Group. Would you please give them a very warm welcome? And now, ladies and gentlemen, we say Selamat Datang. Bit too hard. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in giving a very warm welcome to the Prime Minister of Malaysia, His Excellency Anwar Ibrahim.
Good afternoon, everyone. Digital technologies underpin the way we live, work, and trade. The pandemic accelerated digitalization as 67% of SMEs digitalized to ensure business continuity, and e-government initiatives were launched to improve access to finance, education, and health services. Today, the digital economy is growing faster than the global GDP. Over the next decade, 70% of new value created in the global economy will be based on digitally enabled platforms. As technological advances enhance internet and mobile phone connectivity, consumers and businesses are increasingly moving digital, and AI is going mainstream. From large tech giants to small digital marketplaces, its emerging integration is notable in sectors like healthcare, finance, and retail. There is such strong belief in AI's potential, yet its implementation is presenting some challenges. Empowering and managing large volumes of data, ensuring data privacy, security, and IP, complying with regulations, and readying our people and businesses. As Alan mentioned, I'm privileged to have a seat at the APEC Business Advisory Council and work with 62 other amazing leaders from across our region. Under Peru's chairmanship this year, and it's been an epic APEC year for them, our work focused on 4 AI-related trends for the future of APEC. The first, powering the digital economy. Second, looking at the new digital divide that's emerging in compute access. Third, tackling digital trust and cybersecurity as necessary enablers of the digital economy. And fourth, preparing our micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises and labor markets for an AI-enabled future. Informality was also an important focus of Peru's 2024 work plan, so we took stock of the digital economy's impact on formalization. Earlier this week, ABAC released a first-of-its-kind report on how the digital economy is showing incredible promise in unlocking and empowering APEC economies and facilitating the movement to formalization. This leads us to our panel discussion today on the opportunities and challenges of AI. I'm delighted to welcome our panelists, His Excellency Anwar Ibrahim, the Prime Minister of Malaysia, With the initials A and I, he's definitely the AI Prime Minister. And leaders from globally leading digital economy firms, Zia Mansour joining us from Microsoft, Yangbing Wang from Vobel, and Karan Bhatia of Google. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us today. Let's get started. Prime Minister, Malaysia's digital transformation journey has been truly impressive, attracting global attention and investment from leading technology giants. With digitalization access exceeding 97% of the population, your digital economy is so well positioned for remarkable growth. Furthermore, the confidence in Malaysia's potential as a regional AI infrastructure and technology hub is something we've all been talking about. I understand investments of almost $17 billion have been coming in from global tech giants like Amazon Web Services, Google, Microsoft, Oracle, and others. As Malaysia forges ahead in its high-growth digital economy, what role do you see artificial intelligence playing in benefiting the people, businesses, and overall prosperity of the nation? And can you talk to us about Madani, this focus on innovation and inclusivity that your government is putting a framework in place for? How is your government preparing to harness AI to drive inclusive growth?
Thank you, Jan. If we want to ensure that an emerging economy succeed, remain competitive and sustainable, then it has to be through a quantum leap. And AI is, of course, the answer for now. For that matter, transformation, digital transformation. Now, but there are concerns we have to address. First, the digital divide. We can't talk about economy, Madani, or Madani economy, which talks about trust, humanity, justice, democratization of access, if we do not take into consideration that all the measures of opportunities are given to the urban, rural, and the heartland. It requires an additional infrastructure investments, but I don't think we can avoid that. So which means the concerned digital divide, what we term as a democratization of access to these new instruments and facilities. Secondly, the other concern is issue of ethics. We are living society. Islam is the majority. We have Christians, Buddhists, Hindus, and we want to attain some principle of humanity, values, and ethics. And therefore, the issue of data protection, the input that we provide or place into AI is pertinent, which means upskilling, getting a core of our competent young professionals to be able to understand and involve themselves in the entire planning and also strategizing the need. And I think we move in that direction, then it gives meaning to development, progress, and digitalization. Our concern is will be addressed if we deal with these issues, which means a massive effort to upskill and train our young professionals in this field and benefiting from all industry or which means West and East, with the concerns addressed. Should you therefore confine your support base or infrastructure to the or access to only certain Western companies? No. We take a position that Malaysia must remain competitive, neutral. We talk about centrality, and we should be given the option to decide what is best from our country, be it from United States or China or Europe.
Thank you. Thank you. Zia, I wanted to turn to you on navigating the realities of AI. With innovation moving at the pace it is, how are you seeing customers embrace AI? What value are they seeing as a result? And are there any challenges they're experiencing too?
Sure, thanks, Jan. I was actually just in Colombia earlier this week. 2 weeks ago, I was in Japan and Korea. And what's been super interesting to me is the conversation on moving to the AI economy has been consistent, whether it's government, small business, big business, financial services, or retail, where you're really seeing this adoption of AI. Earlier this week, we actually commissioned a report from IDC, and there are two kind of interesting data points that came out. One was the adoption of AI in the respondents is about 55% in 2023, and 75% answered around adopting AI in 2024. So you're kind of already seeing that increase. The second one on business value, what the data showed us was on every $1 investment in generative AI, there was a 3.7x return. And so you're seeing this real tangible value. But I think what's interesting to me is not kind of some of those data points. I just love the actual customer stories around how AI is impacting. And I think, I'll share one example, which I love, is in Indonesia, agriculture and aqua farm. There was this emerging kind of startup, e-fishery, and they essentially created an app that equipped an aqua farmer. Think about these as individual, very small businesses that essentially, a farmer could use natural language and to get assistance around what about this fungi, what about this water quality, and it just provided this tremendous expertise. And now what we're seeing is these aqua farmers are having higher yield and they're being more profitable. And so, as the Mr. Prime Minister said, I think this democratization of technology, when an aqua farmer in Indonesia can now use AI to make their business more profitable, to me is so exciting. The second area I'll just mention is the one area where I just seen AI adoption, and I think there's kind of general consensus, is around developers and software development. I think we early invested in with GitHub around creating this AI pair programmer. But I'll give you just one example. ANZ Bank recently, just this week, and I think it was their earnings, said in less than 6 months, 7% of all software code inside the bank is now generated by AI. And so again, you're seeing this real use of AI. Now, in terms of challenge, I think it's also an interesting question. I think 4 years ago when we were talking about the digital economy, the big challenge there was around the shortage of software developers. Mm-hmm. You kind of jump forward now, you think about, look what AI just did. It helped solve that challenge around software developers. But guess what? On that same IDC survey, 30% said the number one challenge they have is around AI skilling. And so I think that's going to be a very important topic. It's an area where we're obviously investing. In the last year, we've kind of trained over 14 million people around digital technology. We work with LinkedIn. And I think an interesting stat, in July, we launched this generative AI course. And it's funny, just from July on the certificate, we've had over 1.5 million learners. And so it kind of just shows you that hunger around this AI skills that exists.
Absolutely, and it's, as you said, it's not just the creation of it, it's the use of it, and
Exactly.
Those are the skills that are required. Among the greatest concerns about AI are its potential for IP infringements and deep fakes. I wanted to turn to Yanbing next. He's the CEO of Vobo. This is a global leader in digital content protection and transaction services for the world's largest entertainment companies, platforms, sports leagues, and publishers. Your company is at the forefront of protecting IP as AI evolves. Can you share more about these tools, policies, and approaches that are needed to keep us safe in a world of AI?
Thank you, Jen, for having me here. Yes, Vobo is in the business of protecting IP for content owners for many years, and our mission is to make creative more valuable. As we all know, global entertainment and media industry is a huge industry. Based on statistics, last year, 2023, is approaching $3 trillion in total revenue. So the foundation of that industry, the economy model is based on IP, movie, TV, licensing rights, and with today's AI, thanks to the technology improvement, advancement, the generative AI, really are, on one hand, taking a lot of content and can generate a lot of new content, so which brings challenges to manage of this intellectual property. And certainly companies like Volvo and other companies are working along, including my peer here, that developing technologies to also manage the rights and basically put the to augment the system, make sure the IP is protected, because otherwise, if the IP, intellectual property, no longer has protection, then the whole industry will collapse. So if we believe with the new technology, and certainly need support from government policies, laws, evolution to protect IP in the new AI area, I think we can see a lot of new opportunities. As my colleague here just mentioned some other examples I will talk about in the media entertainment industry. It will empower a new generation of creators to enable them to tell a story globally in a compelling way. And that will, get us shared prosperity. Because the media industry as of today is being top heavy. To produce a good movie, TV shows cost a lot of money. But there's only a very few people can access to that kind of capital and to use that powerful tool to generate movie and $100 million and get $1 billion revenue. Not everybody have that access. But now with the new AI tools, you're allowing, a lot of people, younger generation, individual producers that be able to tell a compelling story using the latest tools. And also, dubbing on multiple languages is very expensive. We're talking here in English, and when I was in the audience, I have to use assistance for translation. And if you go to the movie for big studios, annual, maybe they have to spend hundreds of $1 million just to be able to dubbing the movie and release globally in multiple languages. Individual producers won't be able to access that. But now, again, with the AI, that barrier has been broken. And translate these things, dubbing into multiple languages, will cost nearly nothing. That will bring these new creators the audience globally. This is my first time visiting Peru, in Lima. What a beautiful city. I wish I came here earlier. I would be able to spend more time. So I think that I'm sure that a lot of creative people here be able to tell the story and reach the globally. So I think if we can do it right, this media industry will be thriving because of new tools. And certainly, the future relies on technology and also policy and other things. This digital economy and the creator economy, that's where we focused on, is really enable digital trading. When I was listening here, there's a lot of trading going on, but increasingly percentage of that is digital trade. And I think, we're looking at a future, and I hope by working together, we will be able to empower the new generation and get better, more inclusive and more diversity and more equity for the industry.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Even within ABAC, this new digital services agenda is something that's a top priority for us to sort through. Huge, tremendous growth opportunity, as you're articulating. Karen, Google has done tremendous work on the subject of unlocking AI's potential and creating an AI opportunity agenda. I've checked you out online. One of your recent blogs, you gave an example of how AI tools are optimizing traffic flow, enabling businesses to scale their services, helping farmers detect pest outbreaks, and improving healthcare outcomes. But you also stated that AI's promise will not automatically translate into economic growth and opportunity. So what do we need to consider to ensure that AI can deliver economic impact to businesses and communities?
Thanks, Jan. I mean, look, we are at the beginning of an extraordinary time, we feel. I mean, all of the applications that you've referenced, that have been referenced previously, truly are changing sector after sector at remarkable speed. And the innovations that we're seeing being generated, whether it's creators using AI to come up with the next YouTube video, you know, just what a product near and dear to my heart, and to many of you probably who travel, is Google Translate. You know, a product that dated back to the early 2000s. Every year we managed to add a few more languages. By the beginning of 2021, we were up to 121 languages. Within the last year alone, we've added another 100 languages by virtue of AI, and often in languages for communities that may not have easy access to the internet. Here in Peru, languages like Quechua and Aymara that are bringing communities into the world in a way, in global commerce, in a way that didn't exist before. So this very much gets to the point that the Prime Minister was making, which is the question really confronting us, and by us, I mean the private sector and the public sector together, is what do we do to make sure that the digital divide that we do know has existed and separated within countries and between countries, how do we prevent that from being replicated as an AI divide? And what we have come up with, based on what we've seen, and we've captured this in a report that we've just put out called AI Pioneers. For those of you who are interested, you can Google it. But we basically point to three things. The first is infrastructure. The reality is that at the end of the day, you need connectivity, and that is going to require investments in everything from subsea cables to data centers. It is addressing energy challenges that you alluded to, I think, is very important there as well. But this is going to have to be something that is going to require a concerted effort. It's going to take government creativity and ingenuity and determination. Since I happen to be sitting next to the Prime Minister, I will say that AI is not just his initials, but it is also the approach that I think Malaysia has taken under the Prime Minister's leadership to building that kind of infrastructure. And it's the reason why we recently announced a $2 billion data center investment in Indonesia. So I think one thing is infrastructure. The second is unquestionably going to be skilling and training. AI can be an enormous boost to productivity, but only if you have people who are well situated to actually use it. And so that's going to require, I think, again, both government and private sector working together to try and address the challenge of every community, from school children, educators, small and medium-sized businesses, large businesses, and governments themselves, training them how to do so. In Malaysia recently, we announced, for example, a program where we were going to partner with 161, all of their universities, to create what are called career certificates that enable people who may not be advanced students or advanced degrees at all, just to get basic education that will allow them to get entry-level jobs in the AI-enabled sector. So super narrow kind of example, but something that needs to be replicated at scale. And then I think the last thing is going to be public policy, sound regulation, sound public policy, everything from cloud-first kinds of policies to making sure that we strike the right balance when it comes to the guardrails of really important challenges along the lines of what you were mentioning before.
Yeah, no, thanks for that. Prime Minister, your thoughts. Let's just continue. What do you see as the conditions required to create a successful deployment of AI? Let's think about it from a Malaysian perspective.
From our experience, and now that we are able to attract huge investments from all these big players, then we realize that we need to therefore move as a speed unprecedented for energy, water, and also the understanding, basic training and exposure, changing the curriculum in universities, in colleges, and schools. And so it is a multi-pronged attack. And changes are, easier said than done, because there is also resistance from traditional manner education being taught and introduced. So I think thus far we're successful because we listen. I mean, we don't claim to have expertise. So the moment our friends from Microsoft, Google, or Huawei, or whatever comes and say, look, you give some time, let us listen what you require. Now, okay, energy means green energy, which means green hydrogen, ammonia. So all these things are being done, and I'm proud to say that even within ASEAN, we're talking about an ASEAN grade that help, for example, create or provide more energy. And they were talking about now reassessing our entire policy on water conservation, because we have never seen the requirements of water except by these data centers. I don't know what they do with it, but then they've been asking for more water, more energy. I might say water, not water.
Water.
Yes.
Sorry, that was a joke from before. We'll explain it later.
So I think you're right, which means public policy and governments cannot assume that they can go on inviting and attracting these sort of investments without being prepared to undertake major reform initiatives, which would allow these agencies or investments to come in. And the other question is, of course, the speed of approvals. Now, we are stuck with some bureaucratic rules, and we have to be able to coordinate, to bypass this. And then, and a system is not monolithic. We have state governments, we have municipalities. Now, how do you cut across all this? I'm proud to say in the initial, I mean, Google would testify to that, or Microsoft, or Huawei, or whatever, NVIDIA, we are able to do it. I mean, once you do it with one particular major investor, then the word spread out. And now I think, and because we're fortunate in ASEAN, I mean, this region, ASEAN, happens to be one of the most peaceful in the world. Malaysia, for example, politically is very stable. And then the coordination, the work within the regional, sub-regional grouping is excellent, and that allows us with more than 3 trillion combined GDP, now moving as one of the fastest growing economy in the world. So I think we should exploit this. But it's a very important point, Andrew, you said. We have to listen. We have to understand that this form of government, or governance, global governance, of course, rid the country of corruption, abuse of power, this, to me, fundamental. But the way we do things is not to assume that political leadership has all the answers. These are new technologies, it's challenging, and it is something that demands our immediate reaction. And how do we do it? To tap on their expertise, you see, which normally great political leaders are quite reluctant to do, because we are supposed to be the smartest and able to solve the problems of the world, not realizing we have created too many problems. So I think in our approach, every time, in fact, I ask Zia, when are you coming? Because my plan is that he must sit down at least for 1 or 2 hours with our top players, the politicians, bureaucrats, academicians, experts, to be able to share his experience, and we would then use it. Because they can invest, and we're not going to pay honorarium for his speeches. And so far, we have been quite successful. I think I take that account in all humility to acknowledge that the technology is changing so fast, which means government leaders have to accept and acknowledge that we have to also change the pace of a normal government bureaucracy to an extent that it is really competitive and attractive. And thus far, I must say, Alhamdulillah, thank God, we are able to achieve that. Although, as the great George Bernard Shaw used to say, there's always room for improvement.
But I think what is also really important to pull out of what you've just articulated, in the context of ASEAN, and you're chairing ASEAN for the coming year, there is going to be a need for some form of regional cooperation. regional infrastructure, because not all jurisdictions have land or energy access that's going to be required for this digital economy for AI. So I think an additional point I'd like to come back to a little bit later in the conversation about that.
Jen, to add just two major thrusts in our, for example, ASEAN for next year, I've been thinking. One is the ASEAN grid, which means we'll benefit other, I mean, Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia, will work together. Second is digitalization. Common digital agenda, legal framework, somewhat similar incentives, and we complement each other because some countries have expertise but no water, some have energy, but so we are keen to have this sort of collaboration, more effective.
Very, very important. Zia, over to you. Your thoughts. What do we need to do to create the right conditions?
Yeah, I've thought about this one a lot. I think what's really important first is, if you think about AI, how do we create this local surplus in like every community? Like that's where it has to start. The surplus has to happen in every community. And I think how does AI empower Malaysia? How does AI empower the organizations and people of Peru? Like that, I think is so important. Then I think it's important to kind of look back a little bit on history. If you think about just general purpose technologies that existed, electricity, the printing press. And I think when you kind of look back in history, you see, the greatest impact has happened when there's actually been broad adoption. So then I think the question really becomes, how do we facilitate this broad adoption of AI? And I think the first one I'll say is, the public and private partnership is going to be so important, as I think we've discussed already a little bit on this panel. So, for example, us, at Microsoft, we're investing in many APEC member around that AI infrastructure. At the same time, what's that skilling? What's that tooling to make sure you're again providing access as much as possible around the world? But then I think at the same time, it's so important for the APEC member economies to play that leadership role. I think as Mr. Prime Minister in Malaysia has done, it's such a great example. I think about the national AI roadmap that they have created. It's very comprehensive. It's looking at like the AI infrastructure. It's looking at skilling. How are you skilling all Malaysians around AI technology? It's creating an AI center of excellence in the government, so the government is actually using AI. And so, to me, those are such important conditions. And the last thing I'll just say is what's really important around AI is going to be how are we building AI responsibly, and most importantly, how are people trusting AI? And I think that's actually been pretty, to me, astounding over the last 18, 24 months, has been that dialogue between government, private sector, academia, to talk about, AI, talk about, what does an AI regulation look like? And I'm very optimistic because when I think about what's going to be possible in the time ahead, like that discussion that dialogue is going to be so important.
Yang Bin, your thoughts on this? Does it go back to the trust element, or what are the conditions from your perspective that we need to put in place for AI to be successful?
I think it will take time. I think a lot of things happen like AI, doesn't happen that often, but once in a while, big disruptive technologies come along, and it's going to transform the industry and economy. We've seen that in our, limited career life. Internet has done that. Disruptive a lot of things, over time, and mobile services, ubiquitous mobile service has changed a lot of our lives. And I think AI does have the potential, and this is where people are seeing that. It brings a lot of fear. Initially there's a lot of, disruptive things, and for example, the trust, the AI, other things, the deep fake and all those things, copyright violation. I'm a firm believer that through the technology company, private sector and public sector working together, we can work through these issues. And not too long ago, the Hollywood, that's the industry we serve, had a strike. a lot of writers and actors worry about this AI disruptive, and people thinking about, is that going to take the jobs away? And they try to protect. Well, that's temporary solution. We don't want to destroy the industry, but over time, I think that has happened again and again. Technology, but in my view, I think it's probably for the benefit. It's for benefit outweigh the damage. In the early days of the animation movie, taking Disney as example, people hand paint those things. To produce a movie costs a lot of labor. Pixar was the first company generate a whole animation movie using computer without any human being. Well, I'm sure there's a lot of jobs get displaced along the process, but at the end, it produced more, better animation movies. The industry thrives. So I see that AI, and without panelists talking about these things, the big platform company, when we work out through the issue over time, it will be a positive impact to the digital economy for sure. It will, displace certain jobs, but I'm such a believer of human creativity. We always find better things to do. The human creativity, I think, still holds the value. That's why we're focusing on company protecting that IP and making creative more valuable. So that's kind of what I believe is, it will take time. For a lot of things in the near term, people kind of, overestimate the impact, but in the long run, they underestimate. But to the end, if again, the world come together, organization like APEC, we collaborate, I think human beings are smart enough to figure out the positive solution.
But this is great. I think we were going to close out the panel with one last question, and I want to pick on this theme of talent. Because I would say a year ago, all you were reading about was all the job loss that was going to be created by AI. Today, I think we're thinking a little bit differently, and I think your Pixar example is excellent because it's created a whole new skill category, which is dealing with animation and those forms of visual arts. I'd like to hear from each of you. What do you see as the opportunity to position our people for success in an AI-enabled future? And Prime Minister, I'm going to end with you. You obviously get the final word, but I'll start here with you.
Look, Jan, I mean, some of this is along the lines of what I was talking about before, which is there is incumbent on all of us, I think, to prepare our workforces, to prepare our societies for this in the area of skilling and training. I will say that the work that we've done thus far, the analysis that we've seen of how it is getting applied, does not lead one to believe that that the necessary result of AI's promulgation is going to be massive disruptions in the sense of people being laid off and so forth. Rather, what we're seeing is much more improvement in productivity, evolution in jobs, and unquestionably over time, you're going to see whole new job categories come about. Indeed, to some extent, we are already seeing that. It's interesting if you look back to, the job classifications and where they existed in 1950 compared to today, more than 60% of the types of jobs that existed 70 years ago that exist today did not exist then, right? You think about any technology that's coming, aviation. Okay, you may lose people who did certain kinds of work in a pre-aviation environment, but now you have pilots and air traffic controllers and all these. So I think we are going to see new categories of jobs come about. I think the core is going to be, do countries have proactive strategies for preparing their people and preparing their economies for that? And I think that's really the challenge in front of us.
And Zia, I wanted to point to you on this because you started the panel talking about the example of natural language and the farming community. And I spoke about an e-formalization study that we had done. Like 94% of the informal economy globally is in the agricultural space. It's incredible. 95% of people have mobile phones. So the ability to have that crosswalk and what it can do. So develop that.
I think a little bit, just building on the last comment here. Look, I think AI is going to have a fundamental shift, but I do feel AI is going to amplify like human ingenuity. Like I'll give you one, like just an example I want to share. I think we all probably know someone who works in healthcare. Mm-hmm. I do. I have family in healthcare, and I think the consistent thing you'll hear: shortages, staff, overburdened, and what does that result in? It might result in longer access to care, a little bit longer in the emergency room. And so I'll end with one last example of AI. You think about radiology and X-rays are kind of one of the most common used tools for diagnostics. And so AI now has this ability where you can kind of look at a patient's kind of prior image and a current image, and the AI can then help that radiologist diagnose faster. And to me, like that's so powerful when you think about how that's gonna amplify and help in healthcare. And so, like to me, like that's what gets me excited. And the last thing I'll just mention a little bit is I think there's gonna be two really important areas in this, which will be first, how do we have access to AI? How do we make it as accessible as possible? That includes the component we talked about around skilling. And then it's all about making sure we're building AI responsibly and individuals and organizations and governments trusting AI.
That's great. Yan-Bin, anything to add on this before we turn to the
Yes, this is a great question. I like to share a real example, and I believe it is the training of the workforce to be AI proficient. Just like years ago, people tried to be trained on computer. I graduated from UF, is a proud Gator. One of my alumni from same department, ECE, he's a co-founder of NVIDIA, Chris Malachowski. So I gave credit to him. Actually, years ago, he had foresight in seeing this AI coming and came back to the university, UF, and convinced the university administration, the president, the provost, the importance of AI. And as part of the process, he donated a huge machine to the university as well to empower the professors to learn. And I think the university president Fox and the provost, they were convinced and came out, actually had the first initiative in the United States to create an AI university. Again, I'm just taking this as a real example. What they're saying is that Ford wasn't the first company, invent the car, but it was the first company to get every car into the household, right? And as a university, they want to train not just computer scientists doing the AI, but every discipline, the law, the journalism, the communication, whatever, they all need to be AI proficient. They hired 100 faculty members to train that. And I think that's the future. Essentially, this is part of our panelists saying that as well, is really the access. If today, when we think about AI, there's only a handful of companies we associate with AI, the OpenAI, the Microsoft, the Google, I think it's not there yet. Just like when my parents' generation doing computer, they have to go to a special room, it's huge. Yeah. Now everybody reach pocket, you bring out a supercomputer. So I think the days is coming near is that everybody, the workforce will be AI proficient and can benefit from AI. That's where I think AI will become a job creator instead of decimator.
Thank you. Prime Minister, final thoughts.
Well, will there be disruptions? Yes. But look at it in two areas. Number one, historical antecedents. During the Industrial Revolution, there were massive disruptions. But human ingenuity, that's the second point, will be able to somehow or other utilize their expertise and innovation to create new jobs. And no one in the study of history of Industrial Revolution talks about grave unemployment. Yes, exploitation of workers is a different subject, but in terms of employment, it's no longer an issue. I mean, similarly, we'll have to face that. I think the panelists have been focusing on the issue of training and expertise, which means we should not rely on a few of the so-called professional elites, but to make sure that it is the access to education is further democratized, either through a university or faculties or massive training. I believe that in our Malaysian experience, the huge focus on digital for the people, for the rakyat, it's a little like a mass education, like the alphabetization, the new introduction to basic reading, 3R. But here it is focused on digital technology, on AI, and never underestimate the wisdom of the masses, even without real formal education. We have tried in some districts about coding, who has poor mathematics, poor science, no engineering, but expert in coding. I can't explain how, but somehow or other, human ingenuity forced them to then excel in some fields. So I think whilst we must address these concerns about immediate disruption in some areas, but the strategy and the focus and public policy to embark on this massive democratization of access to AI in every village and every urban, including the urban poor and university and schools, if we can succeed in that, inshallah, we'll be able to resolve that problem. Arigato.
So there you have it. I hope you're as convinced as we are that there's incredible potential here. I want to congratulate our AI PM, Prime Minister. Thank you very much to all the panelists. Thank you. Great. Excellent.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister and panelists. If we could invite you to come to the middle of the stage for a group photo.
Yep.
Very nice. Pardon me?
Are you coming to
Sorry,
Kuala
yep.
Lumpur anytime?
We're gonna
I
get a group
definitely
photo.
would love to. You know, yes, I will. I will.
See you there.
Yes, I will.
Yang
Definitely.
amat
visit.
Want
berhormat,
to do a
kalau
group
boleh
photo
ambil
with
gambar
you.
sekejap.
Here we go.
We can invite you to come to the stage. Thank you very much.
Who we're looking at.
Thank you.
Ribuan terima kasih. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, please another round of applause for the Prime Minister of Malaysia.
You were with Ruth.
Really appreciate joining this important panel on artificial intelligence.
Such a good discussion.
Oh,
Thank you. Very, very
Fellow
good.
Canadian.
Thank you. It's great to
Well
have
done.
you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good luck, sir.
This way.
Everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This way.
Oh, my bag's over there. That's okay.